The following program is sponsored by Community Psychiatric Centers and is produced for educational purposes only. It is not intended as a substitute for medical or psychological advice, diagnosis, or treatment. The content should not be used for self-diagnosis or treatment of any health-related condition. As always, seek the advice of your healthcare provider with any questions regarding a medical or mental health condition.
Welcome to Community Psychiatric Centers Presents. Tonight we're talking about a problem that's affecting a growing number of American children, obesity. What's causing it and what can be done if your child is obese or at risk? To help us understand the problem and treatment for childhood obesity, let's meet our experts. Dr. John Carasso is Clinical Director of Community Psychiatric Centers. He's a clinical licensed child psychologist and a certified school psychologist. And Dr. Robert Lowenstein is Medical Director of Community Psychiatric Centers. He's a board-certified child, adolescent, and adult psychiatrist and a fellow of the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
Dr. Lowenstein, how great of a problem is childhood obesity, and what classifies a child as actually being obese versus being simply a little overweight?
Yeah. Obesity is a very serious problem, particularly in children in this country. The prevalence of obesity, for example, has doubled over the last 2 decades in the United States. Obesity in general accounts for approximately 300,000 deaths per year. And it's said that approximately 1/3 of all children in this country are currently obese or overweight. The condition is also very easy to diagnose, but very difficult to treat. Children are considered obese when their weight exceeds a BMI level, which is a body mass index of approximately 85 to 90% of peers of their same age, sex, and height and weight. At that point, children are considered either obese or severely overweight. The body mass index, by the way, is it's a statistical measurement of a person's height and weight as compared to other children of the same age and sex. The body style of a person tends to play into that as well.
Dr. Carasso, what else do we consider in determining obesity and its impact?
There are a few things. We'll take a look at the family history of obesity, which can be very important. And each of these things I'll be mentioning, we'll be talking more about as the show progresses. But we'll take a look at the child's eating habits, of course, and their calorie intake. We'll take a close look at that. Activity level, of course. And we'll be speaking more about that and how important that is. Other health concerns. The one thing about childhood obesity that we want to focus on is that it's especially troubling because it starts a pattern of behavior that not uncommonly continues into adulthood, patterns of inactivity and unhealthy eating. And that can result in medical conditions that typically are evidenced later into adulthood, surfacing earlier, things like diabetes and high blood pressure, sleep problems, and other eating disorders. We don't want to leave out the psychological and social impact. Children who are obese are more prone to be bullied, more prone to have low self-esteem. They also tend to have some anxiety issues that can get in the way of their schoolwork, so they may be underachievement, and then resulting from that depression. So again, we don't want to underestimate how serious this is and the impact that it can have.
So it can have kind of a domino effect.
It can.
What about the risk factors to childhood obesity? What are some of the risk factors?
There are a few. The two big ones, as one would expect, diet and activity. We want to take a look, or inactivity really, we want to take a look at the child's diet. Children who are obese are more prone to have diets that are high in those comfort foods we speak of. High calorie, high fat, high carb, sodas and high sugars. As well as we want to look at activity level. Children who are more prone to watch more television or be in front of the computer, obviously are at higher risk than children otherwise.
What about things like genetics?
Right.
Does that play any role?
Yeah, absolutely. A child, for example, that comes from a family in which one parent is overweight or obese has a 50% chance of themselves being obese or overweight. If they're born to a family where both parents have that problem, they have an 80% chance of carrying on with the same problem. There also are a number of medical conditions which can trigger obesity, and they can involve conditions like Cushing's disorder, hypothyroidism, tumors of the insulin gland, which produces too much insulin, polycystic ovarian disease can cause obesity in some people. Brain tumors, for example, can also cause obesity, and children can be born with other rare conditions like Prader-Willi syndrome, in which they overeat to a large degree. There are also children who become obese because they're placed on steroid medications for other conditions which become obese, and also there are some psychotropic medications that we give in psychiatry which, as a side effect, can cause a child to become overweight.
All right, we know some of the causes now. Let's take a look at the strategies when we come back. You're watching Community Psychiatric Centers Presents on PCNC.
At Community Psychiatric Centers, the help you need is just a phone call away. Led by Dr. John Carasso and Dr. Robert Lowenstein, Community Psychiatric Centers offer fast, thorough mental health evaluations for children, teens, and adults. And when it's time for therapy and treatment, trust CPC's professional staff of psychologists, psychiatrists, social workers, and therapists to put together a plan that works. Call 1-877-899-6500 today for a free phone consultation.
Treat me. Treat me with understanding.
Treat me.
Treat me with courtesy.
Drug and alcohol addiction is an equal opportunity disease. Individuals in recovery come from all walks of life and deserve to be treated with respect and admiration for winning one of the hardest battles there is.
Treat me without judgment.
Treat me
with humanity.
Alcohol and drug addiction deserves proper treatment. For drug and alcohol information and treatment referral, call 1-800-662-HELP.
Welcome back to Community Psychiatric Centers Presents. We're talking with Dr. Robert Lowenstein and Dr. John Carasso of Community Psychiatric Centers about childhood obesity tonight. And Dr. Lowenstein, let's talk about some of the common treatment strategies to help combat this.
Oh, surely. Well, one of the first things that a child or a family has to do to help a child that is overweight is to control the amount of calories they take in. A second thing, of course, is to be involved in a physical exercise program. Those two combined help to lose weight. However, family structure plays a role in this. I mean, the parents are the ones that choose the foods that are bought at the grocery store. They're the ones who choose how a child eats and where they eat. They're the ones who encourage the child to eat more healthful foods. And so the approach is really to help the child parents to become better at choosing the right foods for the child to eat, to make sure, for example, that the family sits together and has a meal together, rather than allowing the child to eat alone in front of a TV or a computer, which only encourages excessive munching. Also, choosing the right foods to put on the table that are not fattening, but also are attractive for the child to choose. It's also important to try to limit the number of times that a family eats out, because eating out is always a risk. To limit the number of snack foods a child is given, the number of fast foods that they're given, and to basically discourage the child from having too many meals per day.
Dr. Carasso, is a child's activity level really important too? You know, years ago we used to always hear about the President's Council on Physical Fitness. I even had to look on the internet, is it still in existence? And I saw that it is, but you don't hear that much about these things anymore.
Well, yeah, diet and activity, the two key components, no question, and we want to emphasize those two areas. There are some things that parents can do to help with their child being more active, and some of them are rather, one would think that they're common knowledge, but actually they can take some thought. for example, the idea of limiting screen time, TV time, computer time, probably less than 2 hours a day, less than that would be important. We also want to focus on activity level, not so much exercise. And the idea being that, well, of course, for a 6-year-old, we're not going to be in a treadmill anytime soon, but we will get them into the ball field, swimming, bike riding, hiking, those types of things. We want to find activities that the kids enjoy doing, because we want this to be a fun thing for them. If they enjoy climbing, we want them at a jungle gym. If they enjoy going to the library, we're going to walk them right up back to the library. If they enjoy climbing and things of that nature, we want them outside in parks. And again, as opposed to looking at it as drudgery or chores or something that's not fun, we want the parents to set the tone that this is a fun, enjoyable time that the whole family is involved in. And we want, speaking of chores, the family can set up a tone, again, with the parent, that chores are a fun time of day. Well, that may be a hard sell for a child, but the idea that the family going out there raking leaves and shoveling snow, it's a family affair, it's fun, it's active, and it's not something that's seen as drudgery or something that we don't want to do. It's something that's fun for the family. It's a family commitment. It's an important part of it.
What about medications, Dr. Lowenstein? When do they come into play, if at all? Because, you know, you would normally think that all these activities that Dr. Carasso mentioned might help. Is medication a last resort, or when do you use it?
Medication is not a last resort, but it's down the road resort, meaning that, for example, an adult or an adolescent would have to have a BMI above 30 for a physician to consider some of the medications that are out there that help a person to lose weight. They're basically 2 medications that are currently on the market. One is sibutramine, which is a medication which helps to reduce a person's appetite. It's not an amphetamine, it's a non-amphetamine type medication which helps to reduce appetite. The other one is orlistat, which is a medication which prevents the absorption of fat from the gastrointestinal tract, and it helps the person to lose some weight. This, combined with other types of treatments like exercise and dieting, is very important. In addition to medications, I wanted to mention there also are some surgical approaches that are out there, which are last resorts and are really meant for people that are morbidly obese or have other health conditions which are life-threatening, like heart disease or severe diabetes and such. And those types of conditions those types of surgeries are available for people in those categories.
What about, I'm going to take a look at an email question. This is from one of our viewers. My child seems to be eating more than he typically does and is gaining weight. I try to curb his food intake, but it's always difficult to be watching him. What can I do?
You can't watch him 24/7.
Right.
However, the few things we want to consider. One would be, is the child experiencing some stressors or anxieties that they hadn't prior? Not uncommonly, people, not just children, but will turn to food for comfort. And so we want to get a sense, and that's something that we would do in a consult, is talk about what's the child experiencing, are there some family stressors that had not been broached before, and that would be something important to take a look at.
Right. Children tend to overeat at times of stress or change. For example, if there's a death in the family, or a move, or there are other things that are abuse can occur and can first be identified by a child becoming obese. When environmental changes occur in the child, they often overeat for comfort, for security, to reduce anxiety, to reduce feelings of depression, to reduce feelings of lowered self-esteem.
All right, we're going to take a short break. We'll be back with more questions for our doctors right after this. You're watching Community Psychiatric Centers Presents on PCNC.
Every parent has sweet dreams for their baby, but what happens when the unexpected happens? When a child develops slowly, has trouble talking, or withdraws into a world all by himself? Today in America, an estimated 1 in every 150 children is diagnosed with autism. And while there is no known cause and no known cure, an early diagnosis can make a major difference in an autistic child's life. At Community Psychiatric Centers, Dr. John Carrasso and Dr. Robert Lowenstein have more than 50 combined years of experience diagnosing and treating many thousands of children and adolescents with autism spectrum disorders. They, along with their highly trained professional and caring staff, can evaluate, diagnose, and treat children and adolescents who may be having problems at home, in the community, or at school. If you believe your child needs help, call 1-877-899-6500 for an evaluation at one of our 11 convenient locations in southwestern Pennsylvania. Community Psychiatric Centers, connecting you, your community, your world, one family at a time.
Welcome back to Community Psychiatric Centers Presents. As you know, you can always send our doctors an email to www.cpcwecare.com, and we're going to take another one of your emails tonight. Doctors, here's one from our viewers. My child is overweight, and I want her to lose weight, but don't want to hurt her already low self-esteem. What do you suggest? Good question, because you can almost trigger a domino effect, right?
It's a very good question, because kids with obesity already have impaired self-esteem, and they're sensitive to that discussion. However, a parent can raise the question in a sensitive way, can talk about positives that the child has in their life, and try to plan as a family together a lifestyle which will help the child to improve their problem. The key here is to have a family lifestyle that they do together in order to help the whole family as well as the child.
And the vital part of that is not nagging and harping and being negative, because that clearly, you mentioned domino effect, you mentioned, again, that can have the exact opposite effect that we want to have. Also, we want to, again, as Dr. Lowenstein mentioned, set up a family atmosphere of healthy eating and activity. We can focus on positive activity-based goals. We don't want to focus on weight loss goals, like if you lost a pound this week or something like that, by no means. We do want to focus possibly on activity-based goals. We rode our bicycle this far today. That's how much further we can get tomorrow. Make it challenging, make it fun.
Is that tough? I have to ask you this, because if they're coming from a family where the parent, one or two, might be overweight, is it difficult for the child then? They're trying to emulate their parents, and they don't see it. So you really have to educate the parents.
Oh, absolutely. It takes tremendous commitment on the part of the whole family in order for the child to lose weight. In fact, it's best if the whole family begins to lose weight together and continues to do that as a long-term lifestyle change. The problem with weight loss is you can take it off, but the concept of keeping it off is often problematic, and it needs a long-term commitment.
Is there a connection between how a child feels, and I know you talked a little bit about this, and how much they eat? I mean, adults do it all the time. Let's go for the comfort food, but, is there a strong connection even at a younger age?
Absolutely, and sometimes parents will use food as a reward. If you are good, I'll give you extra cake or candy or ice cream, whatever. That's really not a good idea for a child that has the problem to begin with. Also, children will use food as we said, as a substitute for love, sometimes as a way to reduce anxiety and depression, and to comfort themselves in periods of stress.
What steps, Dr. Carrasso, can a parent and child take to avoid eating when they're stressed? Sure,
that's such a common problem. First thing we want to do is we want to get a sense and help the child to understand the difference between eating when they're hungry as opposed to eating when they're stressed. Oftentimes there are triggers, so we can help a parent to monitor the child's eating, to get a sense of when they're eating, when they're binge eating, what situations, what times of the day. And then we can have the parent interfere with those patterns. For example, if there's a certain time of day or a certain situation, when a child tends to eat more, then we will have that parent intervene. Let's go for a walk, let's go for a bike ride, that sort of thing. We will have them, as Dr. Lowenstein mentioned at the outset, not have certain foods in the house. There are certain high-calorie foods, ice creams and cakes and comfort foods. We just don't have those available. That's vitally important. But also have a replacement. Have more healthier snacks available. We want children eating square meals a day. We don't want them grazing throughout the day. We want them being well rested. Children who are not as well rested, who aren't eating as well, tend to be more stressed just by mundane experiences. So all those things come together to help a child tolerate stress better and not rely on food as an escape.
Sometimes children do better if they're in a group of other children that have similar problems. And as well as parents, they do better if they're encouraged by that group to stick to it, and they get the and it helps them keep on their plan. There also are some foods that are addictive in and of themselves, like chocolate. You eat a piece of chocolate, your endorphins rise, and you want to eat another piece of chocolate. So that's a problem that needs to be watched.
Can't imagine that. So what about the role of schools? I'm very curious about that, because I heard somewhere that some child came home, with the something related to weight on their report card. Is that something that's common these days?
Well, I'm not sure about that, but I do know this, so that one would hope that schools are becoming more conscious about the food that they're serving in the cafeteria.
Right.
Because again, there are times where food can be served at donuts or some sort of a muffin or something. That times can be high in fat, high in calories, high in carbs, and we want to set the tone, not just at home, within a family, but within a school setting as well.
Yeah, the school really needs to be committed to serving foods that are healthier than they often do, and that's something that parents can ask the schools to do in their particular case.
All right, we're going to take a short break. We'll be back to talk about some other strategies to treat childhood obesity when we come back on Community Psychiatric Centers Presents. Stay with us.
Have you noticed something different about your child lately? Does your child seem withdrawn, unhappy, depressed, or prone to sudden outbursts? Your child may be suffering from a mood disorder, and it may be time to get help. At Community Psychiatric Centers, Dr. Robert Lowenstein and Dr. John Carasso lead a highly trained professional staff that offers mental health diagnosis, treatment, and therapy to children and adolescents. Call 1-877-899-6500 today for a free phone consultation.
The internet offers wonderful connections, but who's connecting to you? Your personal information could be an easy target for hackers and thieves. But you can protect yourself. Stop and think before you click. And visit staysafeonline.org for ways to keep your information in your hands.
Welcome back to Community Psychiatric Centers Presents. We've been talking this half hour with Dr. John Carasso and Dr. Robert Lowenstein of Community Psychiatric Centers about ways to deal with childhood obesity. And doctors, what about CPC? What can you offer parents who are struggling with children who are obese right now?
Well,
very difficult.
It is a very difficult problem. I think the first thing that needs to be done is, of course, to evaluate the child. They need to have both a medical and a mental health evaluation. First, the medical, to rule out any of the medical causes of obesity, which I described before, as well as to look at the medications they may be on for other conditions, some of the psychotropic medications they may be on, steroids and such. And then once that's completed, do a psychological or psychiatric evaluation, not only of the child but of the family structure, and to try to piece together, how the family operates and how food operates within that family structure, and how they eat together, and who prepares the meals, and who selects the foods, and how they plan the meals ahead of time. All that is very important. And then after that, we can engage the whole family in a treatment approach in which we can come up with solutions for them to improve their planning of their diet in a better way.
And those points are so well taken. It's interesting because we talk about the strategies to help reduce obesity and weight gain and whatnot, and they sound so simple. Watch your diet and just exercise and be more active. And it seems like, so what's the big deal? But of course, if it weren't a big deal, if this were easy, then we wouldn't have the problem we have today. And which is why these factors Dr. Lowenstein mentioned in terms of the family climate, how they treat food, how their meals are carried out. These things have been done oftentimes generational. So people don't even realize how they're behaving with food. And so sometimes an outsider, as a therapist of some, can help the family understand the triggers, the patterns, their dynamics, to help break up those patterns and help them to see things differently and act differently, so that then they eat differently, and things can go much smoother that way.
One thing you talked about a bit was, the sugary sodas and things like that.
Sure.
One of the things that they teach you in all the weight loss programs or weight control is drinking water, and I wonder how much water kids are actually getting.
I think it's extremely important, but the other thing that's important is portion size. I think the most important thing that parents and children need to learn is you can eat healthy, you can eat foods that are tasty for you, but if you limit the portion size, you certainly will have a better effect.
Which is why it's important to avoid too much eating out, because typically the portions served during a restaurant is going to be much larger than what you would have in a home setting. So things of that nature are very important. But it's a tough sell to have your 6-year-old drinking more water as opposed to a soda. So at times it's necessary just to not have the soda available, because otherwise they're going to fight you and they're going to resist. They will.
All right, let's take an email. My child lost 50 pounds, but I am afraid it will come back if I don't watch him closely. How long until he can keep the weight off by himself? That's interesting, because it really depends on the age of the child.
Well, it depends on lots of things, including, again, it goes back to the focus. What is our focus? Is our focus weight loss and calories? Is our focus going to be establishing a healthy climate within the home of activity and healthy eating? If you do that, and it becomes ingrained, and really it doesn't take that long to ingrain that type of pattern, to change patterns and get them in a healthy way, and you'll be fine. In a few weeks and a few months, the issue won't be weight anymore. The issue, it'll take care of itself. If the family's eating right and being active, as part of their lifestyle, it won't be that much of an issue.
And it's very hard to have one member of the family on a diet when all the other members are not. It's hard to stay on a diet like that. The whole family really needs to do it together, set a good example for each other, encourage each other positively, and give praise to each other as they progress.
There's never a situation where we are eating right and being active and doing whatever we're doing because little Joey has a weight problem. No. We're doing it because the whole family needs to eat healthy and be active. It's for the whole family. It's not for one particular child in that family, by all means.
What do you tell the parents of the child who has the genetic predisposition? I mean, they really have their work cut out for them.
Well, they do. If both parents are obese, they have, as I said, they have an 80% chance of being obese themselves. So that's a family problem. You first have to discuss it with the parents, talk to them about the risk factors, talk to them about the consequences of long-term obesity on the child's health and theirs, try to motivate them as a family to make these changes.
Because it takes even more effort, even more gumption in a family such as that than it would in a family where they're all as skinny as rails. So obviously they need to put even more effort and thought into how they're going to change their family climate and their family lifestyle, definitely.
All right, we've talked about a lot of the things. Last bit of information or advice you'd give to parents who are dealing with it?
Last bit of advice is it's a problem that you share with many, many other people. You're not alone, and there is help out there for you.
And speaking of the help, don't be afraid to seek help, to seek assistance, to give us a call, and we can talk about ways of targeting these problem areas and problem climates within homes and make changes for the better. Definitely.
All right. Doctors, thanks as always for being with us, and thank you for watching. We'll see you next week on Community Psychiatric Centers Presents. Good night.